You ever get one of those letters in the mail that makes your stomach drop before you even open it? Like the return address says, Bank of Northeast America. And suddenly you remember every time you used your debit card for something questionable. Tacos at 2 a.m., that time you subscribed to 3 streaming services to watch one documentary, the $17 delivery fee you justified because it was raining and life is hard? Yeah. That kind of letter. So when I pulled the envelope from my mailbox and saw the bold red, "Urgent, action required," on the front, I already knew it wasn't a love note. But I opened it anyway, because I'm brave. Or dumb. Maybe both. Inside? A credit card statement. Except here's the twist: I didn't open a credit card. Not with Bank of Northeast America. Not in the last decade. Not in my entire adult life. And yet, according to this delightful financial horror story, I owed $12,437.93 on a card I had no idea existed. Complete with interest, late fees, and a lovely final notice before collections. I stood there in the hallway of my apartment, shoes still on, keys dangling from my fingers, rereading the statement like maybe if I blinked hard enough it would turn into an Olive Garden coupon. Nope. Still there. Still owing more than I made in a month. I checked the name. My full name. My legal address. My birthday. All correct. There was even a line that said, "Account opened, November 19th, 2022. I was 100% sure of one thing: I didn't open this. And that's when the weirdest thing happened. I didn't panic. I didn't scream. I didn't call the bank in a rage or throw the letter dramatically into the trash. I just sat down on my couch, looked out the window, and thought, okay, who would do this? That list was short. Extremely short. See, I've always been kind of boring when it comes to credit. I never co-signed loans. Never lent my social to roommates or friends. Never helped anyone start a car lease or phone plan. Which leaves only one group of suspects: family. Now, if you've ever grown up in a household where loyalty was preached harder than church sermons, you know exactly how this kind of betrayal feels. Like swallowing a rusty nail. See, my parents are, well, let's say resourceful. That's the polite word. My mom can borrow something for 6 months and genuinely forget it was yours. My dad's favorite catchphrase is, "We're all one family. There's no mine and yours." Unless we're talking about blame. Then it's absolutely yours. Growing up, I was the good kid. Never complained. Never got in trouble. Paid my way through community college working warehouse shifts and eating peanut butter from a spoon. Meanwhile, my younger sister, Mandy, crashed 2 cars by 20 and somehow still got upgraded to a third-hand BMW. Me? I once asked if I could borrow Dad's truck to move apartments. He said, and I quote, "Gas ain't free, bud." So when I called my parents that evening, hands shaking, credit reports still loading in the background, I didn't ask questions. I just went straight in. "Did you guys open a credit card in my name?" There was a pause. A weird one. Like someone had just been caught mid-bite in a crime they weren't supposed to be snacking on. Then my dad cleared his throat. "That depends," he said. "Depends on what? On whether you're talking about the Visa or the MasterCard." My mouth actually dropped open. Like, I know people say that a lot. But this time, I swear it happened in real life. "Are you serious?" I asked. "It's not what you think," he said quickly. "We just needed to float some expenses for the holidays. You weren't using your credit. And technically it's still your family's debt." Those words. Still your family's debt. Like that made it better. Like that somehow made it okay to steal my identity and max out a card without telling me. And just like that, the emotion drained out of me. All the anger, confusion, disbelief, gone. I didn't yell. Didn't scold. Didn't ask him to fix it. I just said, "Okay." Because in that moment, I realized something. I didn't need to argue. I didn't need to convince him he was wrong. I just needed to make one call. And when I did, things started unraveling faster than he could say. Family values. The thing about betrayal? It's quiet. Not like a heist. No alarms. No dramatic music. Just you, sitting alone in your apartment, reading a credit card statement for a card you never opened, with your name, your social, and a $12,000 balance you didn't spend. I didn't panic. I didn't yell. I just sat there, thinking there's no way. But I already knew who did it. Because the list of people with access to my info was short. Very short. 2 people, actually. Mom and Dad. Growing up, we weren't poor. We were budget flexible. As in, no, we're not eating out. We're bonding over boxed mac. Dad called it character building. Mom called it learning to live within your means. Apparently, my means were just flexible enough to support their lifestyle. Still, a tiny part of me hoped it was some dumb mistake. Like Dad checked the wrong box. Maybe the bank got addresses mixed up. Something, anything, other than what it looked like. So I called. He answered on the 3rd ring. Hey, what's up? I didn't bother with small talk. Did you open a credit card in my name? Silence. Then, why would you ask that? Not. No. Not. Of course not. Just deflection. Classic. I got a statement, I said. With my name and info. 12 grand in charges. He sighed. Not like someone caught red-handed. Like someone annoyed they were being asked to explain. It wasn't supposed to be a big deal, he said. We needed to cover some stuff during the holidays. Groceries, car repairs. It's not like you were using your credit anyway. You maxed it out. We're paying it down, he added quickly. We've got a system. Right. I almost laughed. Dad, that's fraud. Don't be dramatic, he said. It's still your family's debt. Those words sat with me like a bad aftertaste. Still your family's debt. As if DNA gave them the right to sign my name, burn my credit, and dump the fallout at my feet. And the worst part? He sounded so calm. So entitled. Like this wasn't a betrayal, but a shared inconvenience. Like I was just being selfish for noticing. I didn't scream. Didn't argue. But something in me snapped. Because this wasn't the first time they'd taken something that wasn't theirs. Just the first time it had a 4-digit minimum payment. I thought about the time they gave my room to my sister while I still lived at home. Or when I got into college and my mom said, "Are you sure you're cut out for it?" Or how they always talked about supporting me, while I worked 3 jobs and they let my sister borrow the car I paid to repair. And now they'd stolen my credit. Because I wasn't using it. I ended the call before I said something permanent. Not because I didn't want to. But because I needed time. Time to think. To breathe. To respond, not react. Because if they thought I was just going to eat this debt and call it family loyalty, they were about to learn what it really meant to owe someone. I didn't go to work the next day. Called out sick, which was technically true if sick of everyone's crap counts as a diagnosis. Instead, I sat at my tiny kitchen table with my laptop, a cold coffee, and a spiral notebook I stole from my last job, and started making a list. First, what accounts are in my name? Because if they opened 1 credit card, why stop there? I pulled my credit report. There it was. Not 1, but 3 open accounts. 3 different credit cards. All maxed out. All opened in the last 14 months. And not just that. One of them had already been sent to collections. Another was teetering on default. The third had a billing address listed as, yep, my parents' home. I felt like I'd been punched. Not hard. Just slow, and repeatedly. Each line item was another slap in the face. $742 at a big box store. $1,305 at a dental office, which I was very sure wasn't my mouth. Even a payment to something labeled Sage Glow Wellness and Spa. I hadn't had a vacation since 2016, and these people were out here recharging chakras on my credit? That's when it hit me, they hadn't just dipped into my credit. They'd used me. Like I was a backup battery for their bad decisions. And I knew, they'd justify it somehow. Probably already had. Dad with his, "We're family" speech. Mom with her, "We were just helping you build credit" line, which, by the way, only works if you actually pay the balance. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized something I hadn't wanted to face. This wasn't a slip-up. This wasn't desperation. This was entitlement. They thought it was theirs. My credit, my future, my silence, all assumed to be shared property in the sacred name of family. I mean, these are the same people who once asked me to co-sign a loan for my sister because you're responsible and she needs a break. The same ones who didn't come to my trade school graduation because it's not a real degree, sweetie, but we're still proud. This had been building for years. I was just too busy trying to survive to notice. So I spent the rest of the day researching, printing, highlighting, building a folder thicker than my lease. I created a spreadsheet with every transaction, cross-referenced billing addresses, tracked usage patterns. I even called one of the card companies under the guise of updating my contact info, just to confirm the phone number on the account. It wasn't mine. It was my mom's. When the rep read it out loud, chipper, like she was reciting today's lunch specials, I had to mute myself so I wouldn't laugh. Not because it was funny, but because sometimes, when life hits you with a betrayal that deep, the only sane response is hysterical disbelief. After I hung up, I sat back in my chair, staring at the wall, heart pounding for a different reason now. I wasn't scared anymore. I was done. Done trying to rationalize it. Done hoping for a call that said, "We're sorry." Done pretending this was a misunderstanding when it was, very clearly, theft in a Hallmark wrapper. But here's the thing about me. I don't blow up. I don't yell. I don't post screenshots or start drama or call cousins to stir the pot. I document. I build. I wait. And then, when the moment's right, I make one move, the kind you can't walk back from. That night, I pulled out a new legal pad and wrote 2 words at the top. Next steps. And underlined them. Twice. Her name was Tara. We'd gone to high school together, me, a borderline burnout with a part-time job at the car wash, and her, the girl who once argued a substitute teacher into retirement. She was brilliant. Unshakable. The kind of person who didn't blink during chaos, just adjusted her glasses and started quoting civil codes. Now, she was a fraud attorney. I hadn't talked to her in years. Not because anything bad happened, just life. But I still had her number. And after 20 minutes of staring at my next steps notebook, I finally texted. "Hey. Random question. You still doing financial law? Like the shady family kind?" She replied in under 5 minutes. "Absolutely. Who am I suing?" And just like that, I had a teammate. We met for lunch the next day. I brought the folder, the spreadsheets, the call logs, even the credit report with all the nightmare transactions circled in red like a crime scene. She flipped through the stack, nodding, her face getting tighter with every page. "Let me guess," she said. "Your parents opened these in your name, told themselves they'd pay it off, then decided oops, too bad, and hoped you'd either never notice or never fight back." "Pretty much," I said. "Classic," she muttered. "You'd be surprised how many times I've seen this exact setup. They always think family means immunity." I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. "So, what can I do?" She gave me a look that made me feel both vindicated and slightly afraid for my parents' future. "Oh, honey," she said. "Plenty." She walked me through the basics. I had a strong case, not just because the evidence was solid, but because they were dumb enough to leave digital footprints all over it. Her eyes actually lit up when I mentioned the phone call I recorded. "You've got them admitting to unauthorized use, linking it to their address, and minimizing it in real time? That's gold," she said. We went over next steps. She suggested starting with a formal notice, a cease and desist on all current accounts, plus a demand for full repayment and removal of my name from any open lines of credit. Nothing too aggressive yet. Just formal. Paper trail. Accountability. Leverage. "If they respond reasonably," she said, "we clean it up quietly. If they push back?" She shrugged. "Then we escalate. Civil suit. Damages. Maybe even a fraud report." That last word, fraud, still hit me weird. Like I'd borrowed someone else's life. Because what kind of person has to lawyer up to defend themselves against their own parents? Apparently me. When I got home, I reread the email draft Tara sent me. Short. Cold. Legally perfect. It laid everything out in clear terms, with dates, amounts, and an expiration for their response. It ended with a line that felt like a punch. Failure to resolve this within 14 business days will result in formal legal action. I stared at that sentence for a long time. It didn't feel like revenge. It felt like relief. For the first time in weeks, I wasn't swimming in confusion. I wasn't wondering what I'd done wrong, or whether I was overreacting. I had facts. Support. A plan. And if I was being honest, I couldn't wait for them to read it. Because I knew my dad. He hated being challenged. He'd spent my whole life being the loudest voice in the room, the one who got the last word, the final call, the benefit of the doubt. Not this time. This time, I had the paperwork. And he wasn't going to talk his way out of this one. I didn't send the letter right away. I gave myself one more day. Not to rethink it, that ship had sailed, but to process what I was doing. I wasn't just calling them out. I was cutting the cord. The one they'd been yanking on for years. Every time they wanted something. Every time they needed to guilt me into silence. They used my name. Now I was going to make sure it meant something again. They called within 6 hours of the letter hitting their inbox. Not replied. Not emailed. Called. 4 times. I didn't answer the first 3. I wanted them to sweat. Let it settle in that I wasn't playing the role anymore. The obedient son, the family team player, the guy who always understood. On the 4th call, I picked up. Are you seriously threatening us with a lawyer? My mom burst out before I could even finish saying hello. I'm seriously trying to clean up the financial mess you made using my name. I replied, voice flat. We're your parents, she snapped. You think we'd ever hurt you on purpose? You opened 3 credit cards in my name, maxed them out, missed payments, and never told me. Intentional or not, that did hurt me. That shut her up for a second. Then came my dad's voice, sliding in like he was saving the day. All right, look, he said. Let's not make this into some courtroom drama, okay? We're family. We can work this out between us. No need to bring in lawyers and make things worse. Worse for who? I asked. For everyone, he said quickly. Why ruin the relationship over some temporary debt? It's not like we bought a house in your name. I actually let out a dry laugh. Wow. So that's the bar now? At least we didn't buy real estate? He didn't answer. You keep saying temporary, I continued. But those cards have been open for over a year. One's already in collections. My credit score dropped almost 90 points. And I had no idea until I got a letter threatening legal action. But sure, yeah, temporary. I could hear the tension crackling on the line. They weren't used to this version of me. The one who didn't backpedal. The one who didn't give them room to wriggle out. We were going to pay it off, my dad muttered. When? I asked. Before or after the interest hit 30%? He went quiet. Then the guilt phase kicked in. We raised you. You wouldn't even have a credit history if it weren't for us, my mom said. And there it was, the classic pivot. I knew every play in their playbook. The guilt. The gaslight. The reframe. You're welcome, I said, with a sharpness I didn't bother to hide. Over the next 2 days, they tried everything. First came the love bombing, texts about how proud they were of me, how much they missed me, how I was the rock of the family. Then the justifications. We were just trying to help Mandy through a hard time. She needed dental work. Your credit was the only one in good standing. Your credit score will bounce back. It's just a number. And my personal favorite. You always bounce back. You're the strong one. Translation, you can take the hit. You always do. But not this time. I stopped responding. Didn't text. Didn't call. Let the unread messages stack like a wall between us. Then my cousin Melanie reached out. Hey. Your parents are telling people you're having some kind of breakdown. Are you okay? A breakdown. Because apparently the only way they could explain me finally setting boundaries was to frame it as mental instability. I'm great, I texted back. Just finished paying my rent on time and didn't steal anyone's identity today. You? She replied with a crying laughing emoji and, let me know if you need backup. I didn't. What I needed was clarity. And now I had it. They weren't sorry. Not really. They were just shocked I'd fought back. Because for years my role had been simple: absorb the damage, laugh it off, keep the peace. Be grateful. Be forgiving. Be available. But this wasn't about family anymore. This was about trust. And they'd broken it, casually and completely. So I started making the real calls. Not to them. To the card companies. To freeze the accounts. To initiate disputes. To submit identity theft affidavits. Each time I spoke to a rep, I could feel something unspool in me, something tight and heavy that had been there for too long. Shame. Guilt. Fear of being too harsh. I let it all go. By the end of the week, I had 3 disputes filed, all accounts flagged for fraud, and one very satisfying police report number attached to my case file. I wasn't doing it to get them arrested. I was doing it to get myself back. And if that meant burning the last bridge between us, then I'd bring the matches. The first sign that things were starting to sting was a group text sent by my mom to the entire extended family. Hi everyone, we're dealing with a financial misunderstanding and could really use some prayers and positive energy right now. Red heart. No mention of me. No mention of how that misunderstanding involved opening multiple credit cards in someone else's name and running them into the ground. Just a vague plea for sympathy, dripping in passive aggression. Classic. I didn't respond. But I screenshotted it, saved it in the folder labeled evidence, and went back to work. By then, all 3 card companies had accepted my dispute claims. The fraud flags were active. 2 of the accounts were frozen outright. One had already been forwarded to the collections department with a formal fraud alert attached. That's when the calls started again. This time, blocked numbers. I let them go to voicemail. Every message was a variation of the same theme. We're being humiliated. Do you really want to ruin your family over a few $1,000s? I can't believe you'd do this to us. You're punishing your mother for something she didn't even do. Oh, but she did. One of the cards was opened with her phone number and email. She clicked submit. She authorized purchases. She just didn't think I'd ever find out, or worse, that I'd do anything about it if I did. Dad eventually tried a different tactic. He called from his work number. Left a message so calm it was almost impressive. Hey. Just wanted to talk man to man. We might have messed up, sure. But don't you think this is all a bit extreme? Freezing accounts? Filing police reports? We're family. There it was again. That word. Family. Used like a shield, a distraction, a catch-all excuse for crossing lines. I didn't call him back. Not because I didn't have anything to say, I did. I had paragraphs. Entire monologues. But at some point it hit me. I didn't owe them an explanation. I wasn't the one who lied. I wasn't the one who broke anything. All I did was refuse to carry a debt, financial or emotional, that didn't belong to me. So instead of calling back, I did something else. I checked my credit score. And smiled. It had gone up by 21 points since the last freeze took effect. Small but real. A breadcrumb. Proof that cleaning up their mess was working. Then I filed for an extended fraud alert, the kind that requires anyone opening credit in my name to jump through federal-level hoops. I added a security freeze across all 3 bureaus. I even signed up for a credit monitoring service. Not because I'm paranoid. Because I've met my parents. And I know better now. I also emailed Tara, my lawyer friend, to let her know everything was moving forward. She called me 10 minutes later. Your dad left me a voicemail, she said. What? I blinked. How'd he get your number? I don't know, but it was impressive. He said he respects my position but hopes I can see the long-term damage I'm doing to a family unit by encouraging litigation. I snorted. Did you laugh or vomit? Both, she said. In that order. She asked if I wanted to proceed with the civil case. I told her yes, but not for the money. I just want them to know they're not untouchable. I said. I want it to be on paper. In a file. Something they can't pretend didn't happen. You've got that already, she said gently. You've done more than most people would. I didn't respond right away. Because she was right. And yet, it didn't feel done. Not yet. Because the people who told me were all one unit. Had split off the second things got hard. Because the ones who used my name for their gain were now using it to tell everyone I was unstable, vindictive, ungrateful. Because even after all this, they still hadn't said sorry. Not once. So no, I wasn't done. Not until they felt it. The way I had. The deposition wasn't dramatic. No outbursts. No sobbing. No courtroom theatrics. Just my parents, a beige conference room, and Tara sitting next to me in a navy blazer that said, "Try me. I dare you." They looked older than I remembered. Maybe it was the lighting. Or maybe it was the realization that, for the first time in their lives, their actions had consequences. We didn't exchange greetings. No hugs. No fake pleasantries. Just the lawyer from the credit card company reading off the timeline. 3 accounts opened in Mr. Carter's name. Authorization details match Ms. Carter's personal email and phone. Purchases made from your shared residence. No communication with the account holder prior to charges. Is this accurate? Silence. Then my mom, quietly. I didn't know it would go this far. Tara leaned forward. Can you define this far? Do you mean being caught, or being held accountable? My dad shifted in his chair. We thought we'd pay it off before he found out. You didn't, I said simply. He flinched like I'd slapped him. Good. Because I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't even hurt. I was done. Watching them squirm didn't bring satisfaction. It brought clarity. These were just people. Flawed, selfish, and finally being seen for who they were without the filter of, but their family. They offered a settlement. Tara declined. We weren't there for cash. We were there for the record. The card companies would wipe the accounts clean from my history. My credit would recover. My parents would assume liability for the balances. And now that the accounts were frozen, they couldn't just pretend they'd vanish. After the meeting, my dad tried to talk to me privately. Look, he said, hand on my arm. We got caught up in things. It wasn't meant to hurt you. I looked at his hand. Then at him. You were never supposed to mean it. That's the problem. He dropped his arm. My mom chimed in behind him. We were desperate. No, I said. You were entitled. There's a difference. She opened her mouth again, but I shook my head. Save it. You had every opportunity to fix this before it ever landed here. You chose silence. And I'm choosing distance. They didn't follow me out of the room. Maybe they finally understood that I meant it. Maybe they just knew begging wasn't going to work this time. Tara and I walked out in silence. When we reached the parking lot, she handed me a sealed folder. Official confirmation, she said. Fraud claims accepted. Credit restored. Case closed. I took it. It felt heavier than it looked. Thanks, I said. You gonna be okay? She asked. Eventually. I nodded. I think this was the part one needed the most. Not the fix. The fact that someone else finally looked at it and said, yeah, this is messed up. She smiled. It was messed up. And now, it's documented. That night I sat at my kitchen table, the same place where this mess had started, and reread the letters from the banks. The settlement agreements. The confirmations. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was drowning in someone else's mistakes. I felt clean. Not healed. Not yet. But no longer guilty for picking myself over their chaos. And in that quiet, I realized something. They hadn't just messed up my credit. They tried to make me responsible for the cost of their choices, like they had my whole life. Only this time, the debt was real. And I'd finally stopped paying it. It's been 9 months. My credit score is almost back to where it was. The fraud alerts are still active, and I keep a locked folder of every piece of documentation, just in case. I've moved apartments. Switched banks. Got a new number. Everything that was once shared is now mine again. No more, it's all in the family. Just me, my boundaries, and a list of people who don't get to guilt trip their way back into my life. I haven't spoken to my parents since the deposition. They tried, of course. Sent a Christmas card signed only. Hope you're doing well. Called once on my birthday. I declined it. No voicemail. Part of me still half expects them to show up at my door, holding a casserole and a half apology. But the bigger part of me? Doesn't care. Not out of bitterness. Not even anger. Just peace. Because I didn't scream. I didn't blow up their lives. I didn't go scorched earth or post screenshots or stage a public takedown. I made one call. And then another. And another. And eventually, the people who thought they'd never be held accountable found out what it's like to be listed under someone else's name, and not be in control of it. Funny how that works. Now, I don't even flinch when the mail arrives. I open letters without dread. I check my accounts without holding my breath. And when someone says, "You're really protective of your info," I just smile and say, "Yeah. I learned the hard way." Some people inherit land. Or heirlooms. Or childhood scrapbooks full of family memories. I inherited debt, lies, and the burden of silence. But I gave it back. In full. With interest.